Stephanie. Welcome to the Mind Talk podcast. Can you tell us a little something about you?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, Rushi. Thank you for having me on this podcast. It's lovely to chat with you about a topic that's super important, something that I'm super passionate about. That's great. So, I'm Stephanie. I am a board certified functional nutrition coach and also a health coach. And I actually spent 15 years in the beauty and skincare industry. So, I've been on both sides of the equation, if you will, in terms of skin and health. And but my background and my passion has always been in nutrition. I studied nutrition. I It's always been a through line through my own personal journey as well. And so it wasn't until I through that journey, it wasn't until I connected the dots between both my external care and my internal care that I was able to find lasting change. So with that, I started doing my own coaching, my own consulting, and really working and really made it a goal to spread more awareness and empower more people with nutrition.
You say that you're a nutritionist. So, what is the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian?
So I am a certified nutritionist.
Right.
I would say the way that I practice is more as a coach, and it's more of a combination of everything. So there's a difference between functional nutrition, and we'll talk a little bit about that and I'll break that down a little bit. The difference is dietitians have to go through a 12-month internship. They have to sit for an exam and get their license to practice dietitian. Everyone, both nutritionists and dietitians, will study the same content during their undergrad or their master's or whatever it may be. However, if you don't sit for that exam, then that's the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. So you can be both. And I would say that depending on the person, the level of knowledge for that person is can be equal. However, I think that's something to be mindful of course, and to take that into consideration if it is important for you. Then there's another category of what we call functional nutrition.
Mm.
Now, functional nutrition, so traditional nutrition, as you might imagine, or as most people will perceive it, is you have a maybe a challenge, a goal like weight loss, a chronic disease, or whatever that may be, and you need certain foods to help you or to adjust your diet to help complement that. That's really the role of a dietitian, or in some cases, nutritionists. A functional nutrition looks at it at a more holistic lens. So we believe that nutrition sits within an ecosystem together with your stress, how you eat, the times that you're eating, the combinations that you're eating, your lifestyle, your culture. All of these are factors that can contribute to the symptoms that you're experiencing or the challenges you're experiencing. So we don't look at food in silo and we don't look at it as symptoms. We look at it as a system that works together. And the goal of functional medicine, because functional nutrition is an arm of functional medicine, is to help you understand those patterns.
Mm.
Then it's okay, let's understand those patterns. Let's help you understand what's actually the why behind, your symptoms. Then we connect the dots and then we kind of could be working with maybe a specialized dietitian, maybe working with your dermatologist if you have a skin issue, and working with the medical care system together to understand what that is and to take action.
And this could probably take a long time because you're trying to understand the why. So it's a lot of, okay, maybe stop this food for a while, go to another. Could you explain more of that? How does that work?
That process, yeah, absolutely. Everyone's different.
Mhm.
So I would say the process is very dependent on the individual, right? If your health history or your goal is, let's say, more straightforward, you're looking for weight loss and you're mostly healthy, then maybe you can go more of a traditional route and you don't have to do so many specific tailoring. However, if you are someone with, let's say, chronic symptoms, we're talking about skin issues like constant acne. That's a big one that we see a lot that changes over time. Chronic inflammation, especially for women as you age, there's also different things. Unexplained symptoms, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, all of these things that are in the sub, like you're not diagnosed yet, but you're in that kind of in between, then yeah, it's a little bit of a puzzle, I would say, to try to figure it out. But I think that's the role of someone like a functional nutrition coach or a coach per se to help guide you through that. Because as someone that's gone through that myself, and it took me decades to figure it out,
Mm.
it's overwhelming. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of information out there today that is not necessarily right or wrong for the individual person, right? And there's a lot of noise, and everyone's different, and there's no one size fits all. So you can't say that I have this symptom, I'm going to correlate it to this one food. I eat this food and I'm going to be better. Like it's not linear like that. So we need to look at the whole picture. But the idea with a guided approach is we take you through methodically and try to cut down your trial and error as much as possible, right? We look at it and we partner together to say, hey, these are your symptoms. These are the possible likely causes. Now let's look at the food, your food, and let's do this strategically so we can get to your answer faster.
You were in the beauty industry, you said, for 15 years or more than 15 years, right? And
Yeah.
you've obviously made that shift. And I
Mm,
believe when such shifts happen, such radical shifts happen, there's always
mm,
like a strong why behind that. So
mm.
are you comfortable sharing your story?
Definitely, I can share a lot of my experiences that has shaped where to how I got to here today. So my journey with nutrition started as a teenager. I was an athlete and you needed to be on top of your game. And I was actually a figure skater. And so performance and showmanship was two very big things that often can maybe come into conflict with each other if you're not
Yeah.
careful. And throughout the years, I experienced a lot of gut issues from a teenager. I had terrible gut issues. I couldn't explain it. I've done maybe 5 endoscopies, nothing, zero. No, they couldn't tell me what was wrong. And for a long time, I like just didn't know. And I studied nutrition. This was the crazy thing was that I studied nutrition as my bachelor's degree, and I was dealing with these symptoms, and I had no idea what to do with them. Like you already thought that you I thought I was eating relatively healthy, and I was an athlete, but I was still experiencing it, and I didn't know why. And the reason why I didn't go into nutrition a long time ago was because back then, so 15 years ago, the nutrition industry and the idea of wellness was just not as advanced as it is today. And to be honest, as a 20-year-old, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't think that a clinic setting was the right setting for me at the time. And so that's how I ended up in beauty. And through that, I loved it. I also had a huge career there for a really long time. Through my own journey, I always came back to nutrition. And I always felt as the information started to grow, as the breadth of information started to increase, especially post COVID, and more noise was out there, the more I wanted to just be like, no, this is not, this is not for everyone. And I really felt that there was a space to create more of a voice in
Mm.
that. And that's what created the shift for me to move into that space. And that voice just got stronger and stronger. And I think that it's one of those things that I thought about moving to nutrition for a few years. And then I went and restudied it, recertified myself, and did all of that. And I wasn't really sure if I was ever going to actually 100% move into it after years of trying to figure out on my own. And to just finish that story, because I never did, is after 5 endoscopies, it actually took me doing a full elimination for myself, a guided one. And that's when I discovered I had a lot of intolerances. So
Mm.
I was gluten intolerant, I became egg intolerant,
Mm.
and it became challenging to try to adapt to that kind of diet. And the great news is that I realized that there's so much of those intolerants are actually stress induced, which is crazy. So you can actually grow out of intolerances, which is the beautiful part, is that your body has the power to heal itself if we can nourish it the right way. And so through that, I was just like, you know what? Let's try and let's see where it goes.
Thank you for sharing. I think that was really beautiful. And your mention about growing out of intolerances, I'm going to come back to that later.
Mm,
But you also mentioned COVID, right? COVID was a time when a lot of people either went the healthy way or the unhealthy way. So I'm someone who went the healthy way. I really want to lose weight and everything. And I put myself on this diet where I was not eating any carbs, or because I'm a rice eater, maybe like 1 tablespoon of rice because I just can't live without it. And then something happened, life happened, and I went back to my comfort foods, and the
mm,
weight just bounced back. And how? So I've always wondered which is the best diet, like keto, Atkins, because I've heard where people say don't have the keto or the Atkins diet because it's so restrictive, but that really brings results. So, what, according to you, is the best diet for someone who wants to lose weight, for example?
Yeah. You bring up a good point at the very end. You said for someone who wants to lose weight. I think first, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't believe in diets. And I don't believe that there is a one diet that fits all. I think there are general principles
Okay.
of food that is good for you. And that's really the foundation of when we talk about longevity, particularly, for example, like eating whole foods, real foods, making sure you eat enough vegetables, fruits, enough color, fiber, protein, really the basics, the foundation,
Mm.
and then limiting the high processed foods, the refined sugars, and things like that. So that's a general framework that I believe everyone can benefit from. Now, depending on the individual and the goal of the individual, that will change. And that's why I don't really believe necessarily in one diet better than the other. I do think there is a general best practice framework that
Mm.
would be very beneficial for most people. Then it's a question of depending on your goal, depending on your current diet today, right? Because we want to make sure that you can also make changes that are sustainable to your diet. If you're someone that is, let's say, Asian descent, Chinese, Indian, you're used to eating cultural foods, white rice, all these every day, and suddenly I tell you, no, go eat a salad, that's not going to be a
I
sustainable
don't
diet.
want to
That's
ever eat a
not the
salad.
best. That is not the best diet for you. So, yes, in a Western culture, maybe that could be the best diet, the best quote unquote, could be a mixture of salads and having a big salad for lunch, colorful salad, and all of that. But ultimately, the foundation is the same. It's vegetables. So whether it's a raw salad or a cooked
Mm.
vegetable, stir fry vegetable, it's still vegetable, right? So we need to actually boil it down to the different building blocks, the framework, and then adapt it to your culture, your lifestyle, your goal, and whatever that may be. So to come back on your weight loss specific goals. So the reason why, so I definitely don't recommend to cut carbs altogether
Mm.
because carbs is the essential energy for your body. It's the first thing your body will burn as energy. But there is a difference between refined carbs and complex carbs. So the complex carbs, like your whole grains, your brown rice, your quinoa, your all of these are important for you to have in your diet because that's actually what's going to help with your digestion and your detoxification.
Mm.
Now, if you eat white rice, because most Asian diets are full of white
Yes.
rice, I'm not telling you not to eat it. Now, this is where the other pieces of nutrition come in, right? It's not just about the food, it's about how you eat the food. What are you eating it with? Because what is causing those volatile spikes or the bloating, or maybe when you eat a lot of carbs, suddenly you feel very lethargic and very fatigued, or sugar crashes, etc. It could be because of the way you're eating it or
Okay.
what you're eating it with. So when you eat white rice, and there's actually research that shows if you eat white rice on its own, It has the same effect as eating plain white sugar. Your blood sugar will go up and it will
Oh,
crash
okay.
because it boils down to sugar is a type of
Mm.
carbohydrate. However, so the goal is actually to taper that sugar crash as much as you want to keep an even blood sugar as much as possible. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's what's going to give you the steady energy, the balanced hormones, the steady weight, all of this. It's you want even blood sugar so that your body can flow
Mm.
as optimally as possible. And if you eat white rice, if you're pairing it with protein and fiber, so protein and vegetables, it actually will naturally dampen the insulin response.
Okay.
A lot of times when you say, even when you eat a meal, don't eat a meal that is plain pasta, for example, or plain rice, because you don't have the protein and the vegetable to help with the digestion and with the blood sugar balance and the regulation. So that's what's going to cause spikes. But you want to make sure you're adding it in. And then that way you can still eat it, but you're also managing your blood sugar level as well.
That's interesting. So it's basically the same food, but how you pair it completely changes how it interacts with your body.
Yes.
Mm. Is it true for meat and vegetables? Because as I said, like keto or Atkins, they eliminate carbs completely. So if you
Mhm.
eat meat or vegetables on their own, or do they need
Mhm.
to be paired with something else?
So I think that different diets work for different individuals. So I've done keto. I've personally done keto. I've done gluten free. So I've done low carb. And for some people, it works for them.
Mm.
And that's okay. I'm not saying that don't do it, don't do keto at all, don't do gluten free at all, don't do. I think everyone has their preference and they know their body best in terms of what makes them feel good. The important thing is really down to making sure you get enough nutrients and that you're not adding on too much of the bad, quote unquote, the high saturated fats and things like that. So I'm going to take keto as an example. There is definitely a healthy way to do keto,
Okay.
100%. However, because you are not eating carbohydrates, you're not eating fiber, you're not getting the fiber from like whole grains or for carbohydrates, you actually need to make sure that you're getting enough of it from the other foods that you are eating.
Okay.
It's a risk of nutrient deficiency
Mm.
versus saying, okay, that's bad. It's a question of are you eating enough of the nutrients you need to fuel your body in the right way? And with keto, the one thing to be mindful of is actually the saturated fat content because a lot of times meat has higher levels of saturated fat. Again, I love eating protein and I love meat and I eat a lot of protein, but the quantity, the quality, what types of meat, then that's where that factors into play, in where you just need to be mindful that you're not over indexing on the bad stuff, because then that's just going to outweigh the good stuff that you're
Yeah.
trying to do.
So what you're trying to say is no diet is bad or no diet is good, but understanding really how your body interacts with that diet is the key to a
Yeah.
holistic nutritional approach.
Yeah, I think that absolutely understanding what you need for
Mm.
your body, for your goal,
Mm.
is going to will need to be reflected in the diet that you choose, right? So, as especially for women, I would say, I think with women, as you evolve, as you change, your hormones change. As your hormones change, you need different foods to support that. And so, one thing to also keep in mind is it's not static. Nutrition's not static.
Mm.
Nutrients are not static. What you needed when you were 15, 16, when you're growing, is going to be different from what you need when you're 40.
Mm.
So a keto diet or the diet that you choose may work for you at a certain age. It may not be what's going to work for you later on.
Yeah, okay. I will come to the hormonal and everything later, but I want to talk about fasting. Fasting is so big now. And I was watching this clip somewhere of an Indian traditional medicine practitioner, and he said, according to the Indian system, we never had the concept of breakfast. We only had two meals. And if you're eating by 7:30 p.m. at night, the next meal won't be until 12 p.m. What is fasting? How, again, how does it sit with women and their bodies? And also in India, fasting has also been very traditional, cultural, and religious. So a lot of women did fast. Like I knew of a woman who'd fast 3 to 4 days in a week for different kind of gods. So could you shed some light
Yeah.
on fasting as?
Yeah. I mean, first, fasting is again an individual preference. At the root of it, it comes back to is are you getting enough nutrients in the periods you're not fat, like when you're eating,
Mm,
right? Two is we're looking at blood sugar level regulations, making sure that you're having this stable blood sugar throughout and
mm,
that we're not overstressing your body.
okay.
These are the three fundamentals that anything you talk about really comes back to. Because, so to give an example for fasting, is in a general rule of thumb, your food, in order for it to be absorbed in your body, requires digestion and detoxification. And it also needs rest and recovery. So, to a certain degree, we don't want to overload our system, our gut. So, having, I think, a general rule 12-hour rest and digest, like your 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. sleep and recovery, is, I think, can be beneficial for many people. Now, beyond that, and I'll get to the cultural piece in just a moment, beyond that is a question of the individual, because research has shown that short-term fasting can be beneficial for those who, let's say, want to lose weight, who have risk of cardiovascular concerns, etc. Short-term fasting can be beneficial because it's going to help you bring down those blood sugar levels and things like that. However, if you're someone who doesn't need to fast, if you're an average healthy human being, or maybe you're someone, for example, you're someone who's extremely stressed, high performing, busy, you're doing a million things at once, your body's already stressed,
Mm.
then I personally wouldn't recommend fasting because that's actually going to add more stress to your
Oh,
body.
okay.
Because there our body can only hold so much stress. Like we have a stress
Mm,
quota, right? If your body is already holding a lot of stress and it's not used and it doesn't need to fast, right? Like it doesn't, then it just feels like your body's going to feel unsafe. It's going to feel like you're taking food away from it and that it's going into kind of like starvation mode, right? So we want to make sure we're nourishing our body enough
mm,
to to get us through the day. That's important. So when you do fasting, you want to make sure you're doing it methodically and strategically. If you are going to do a fast, let's say in a lot of cultures, this is very common. Short term is something has shown to be beneficial in some cases, but a long term fast is something to then make sure that you are doing it in the right way and the healthy way, and that you are making sure you're adding in and replacing all the right things to really support you.
so fasting can induce stress, and it's important to see what your lifestyle is before you embark. Again, it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. Yeah. So your body works best with rhythm, not with restriction. So it works with consistency, it works with patterns, it needs to feel safe. A lot of times when we talk about food and nutrition, we don't really talk about safety, but your body has to feel safe. When your body doesn't feel safe, this is when it goes into the fight or flight
Hmm.
mode, right? The stress mode. And that's when your body releases cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And that's when it triggers inflammation, feelings of bloating, exhaustion, all of these things. It's because your cortisol, it's like a light switch that's gonna turned on. You can't turn it off. It's just, and you can't turn it off. So, you know, for some people, if your cortisol level's already super high, then adding additional fasting may not be the best approach in that case.
Best approach in that. Got it. Let's come to a very topic very close to my heart, which is acne. because I had a lot of it in my teenagers, and now it's completely cleared off. And I did not imagine in the wildest of my dreams that my skin would ever clear up. And you do specialize into the skin aspect through nutrition.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So what would you like to know first?
You know what? This is an open question. Whatever is important, just tell us.
Okay, so I'm going to take a step back because
Mm.
I do think that maybe nutrition is not something that comes top of mind when people think about skin.
Right.
That's for one. I think that skin is one of the biggest organs in our body. It's not just used for it has multiple functions, right? It's there to detoxify, it's there to protect us, it has to carry moisture, it has a lot of different things that it needs to operate. So it needs a lot of nourishment actually to keep it functioning on a regular basis. And when it comes to acne, it's an interesting one because there's a lot of body of research connecting food and skin inflammation like acne. And ultimately, most acne is actually hormonal. It's all tied, it's all connected. Acne is all connected to our hormones, our lifestyle, our stress, our blood sugar. Again, back to the foundations of functional nutrition. And to give an example, you mentioned you had acne as a teenager. This is when your hormones peak the
Mm.
most. And this is when your hormones go into overdrive. Everything kind of changes and everything kind of disrupts everything. Fundamentally, one of the reasons for acne as a teenager is because you start having more androgen in your, so testosterone, these hormones,
Mm.
and it's actually these that are what creates the oil glands. They secrete the oil production in your skin.
Mm.
So when you suddenly go from not much androgen to suddenly a lot of them, then that's when your skin starts to freak out. So when we look at acne, we're actually looking at the ratio between androgens and estrogen. More estrogen,
Mm.
less likely to have as many oily glands, more androgens, likelihood of having more oily skin, therefore more acne and clogged pores. So this is also part of the reason why sometimes you might hear that teen males have a tendency to have more acne,
Right.
teen acne. It's because their levels of androgens are actually higher, right? They have more testosterone. Uh, and it's the same pattern when we go into as we age with women
Mm.
because your estrogen levels decline as we age, right? As we go into perimenopause, menopause, your estrogen levels drop. Your hormones in general all naturally drop, but the reason why you could be getting more acne later in life is because that ratio has tipped again back to an androgen dominance. So
Mm.
when we look at skin, we're actually looking at hormones and then looking at the lifestyle factors that affect those hormones, which then comes down to stress, blood sugar, sleep, and all of these other holistic factors.
So going back, you like even with acne, you don't
Hmm.
treat the surface, but you go back and you start with, let's talk
I
about
always start
your,
with the gut,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
it starts with the gut.
So it starts with the gut. There is a lot of research in what they call the skin gut axis. So
Mhm.
the skin talks to your gut talks to your skin. And a lot of acne and a lot of skin concerns are both hormonal, but they're also part of your immune system. It's your immune system overreacting, basically, and it's showing up on your skin,
Mm.
right? And your gut holds 70 to 80% of your
Mm.
immune system. So if your gut is not balanced or healthy,
Yeah.
and or your liver is not detoxifying correctly, then it's going to show up on your skin.
Mm.
And it can, right? Again, this is going to vary from individual to individual because, again, it's a combination of many different factors. I'm not saying you have a bad gut, therefore you have bad skin. That is not necessarily the case. However, if you do have chronic skin concerns, acne, eczema, then it is something to look deeper into, to look at it more holistically.
Mhm. I want to come back to the topic of weight loss in women. A lot of times it's very difficult for women to lose weight. And
Mm,
to me, it also has to do with the role that a family plays in supporting that journey. Because for me, I struggle with weight a lot. And to me, it's been more spiritual than physical or anything, right? It's one is to show up for yourself, but also how, after cooking for the whole family, the last thing I want to do is look at my nutrition. I don't want to
mm,
be in the kitchen for another second after that. Yeah. So,
yeah.
can you talk about that?
Nutrition to me is a family thing. It's important to almost look at it as a family unit. Like, what is the best nutrition that can support the whole family, right? So when you cook, you're cooking for the whole family. You're not cooking just for yourself and then cooking for your kids and then cooking for your husband, etc. Right? Everyone needs to be on board. And I think that's important because support is a big key part of recovery or any progress and motivation, and having that support system is super important, and particularly for women. Women need that community to feel supported, to feel, and that's actually very helpful for women specifically, and more so for women than for men. And so when I work, so I'm going to give an example. I had a client who was going through acne issues, skin issues, and she needed to do a eliminate some sort of tailored elimination. And she cooked a lot at home, and she cooked also for her husband. And her husband ate Asian food,
Mm.
right? So suddenly we need to make sure that he's on board with what I'm cooking because we eat the same foods. And that's where learning what types of foods or what type of combinations of foods could be most helpful, that could be helpful for you and the family, and then finding it, interweaving it into kind of your daily meals and your daily recipes so that you don't feel that your nutrition is a separate thing that I suddenly need to also think about. Rather, it's one shared mission for the whole family. And I think that's super important. Otherwise, goals, it can be very difficult. If you're already thinking of a million things at once,
Ah,
then I can imagine the last thing you want to think about is, okay, what do I now need to cook for myself?
so, what I'm taking from today's conversation is really nutrition is not restrictive. In fact, I like what you said. It's a rhythm, it's how you
Mm,
connect with food and nutrition. And it's a whole family affair. And it's everything starts with your gut. So, focus on the gut first before we go on to other avenues. And yeah.
yeah. I would add on one last thing about the gut piece is for different people, it may be the gut. For some people, it could be detoxification, or it could be just nutrients, right? For some people, they might have a healthy gut, healthy liver, and it's just they're not eating enough nutrients. Foundationally, it's the first step, I would say, is to observe your own patterns, observe your own symptoms, observe your own patterns. And then from there, you can start connecting the dots to what you actually need.
So, nutrition is really about the mind body connection then.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for today. And you've just been so generous with all the sharing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was fun.